Good afternoon. Can you hear me? Can I hear you? So let's test this. Who's here from the PCC community? Okay. Some sub-community of PCC. So, Gerontology program. Okay. Excellent. Who is here from another gerontology program at another college or university? Okay. Hey, who's a lifelong learner? Yes, you can belong to more than one category at the same time. Who is joining us from a community organization or agency or, okay. Good. Did I not capture anybody? And you want to tell me why you're here and who you're representing? Oh, cool. The potty press. Excellent. Thank you for coming. So we apologize for getting started just a little bit late, but I think we're ready to get underway. And my name is Jenny Sasser, and I am serving as the facilitator for our event today. I work at Elders in Action as the program coordinator for the Age Friendly program. I'm also an educational gerontologist. I just left a very long career at Marylhurst University as the foundress and director of the gerontology program there. And I am happy to report that after lurking in the shadows for a very long time and cheering from the sidelines while the PCC gerontology program developed, that I'm now on the instructor pool for the gerontology program at PCC. Yes. Thank you, Jan. So I've joined the Geronauts, but I'm actually a Geropunk, and so I'm also here. I can be in more than one category at the same time, but I'm also here representing the Geropunk project. So if any of you in the audience are part of the Geropunk project, I know at least a couple of you are, honorary or otherwise. Thank you. Thank you. I also want to just give a shout out to the Geropunk project, which the PCC folks have really supported as well. If you want to know more about that, you can approach me later, because this isn't really about me right now. This is about this fantastic event, End Ageism, promoting age diversity, inclusion, and equity. And this is what folks at PCC's gerontology program are calling a mindset intervention, which sounds really serious and intense, and I quite like it, actually, a mindset intervention. And really what we're gathered here to do for the next less than 3 hours now, but quite a chunk of time, is we're having a teach-in and a learn-in together. So we're all teachers, we're all learners, and we're going to spend this time together really examining from different perspectives what ageism is in its many manifestations, including how we manifest it in our own lives. Even those of us who are trained in gerontology need to continue to do the work of consciousness raising around issues of aging, later life, and ageism. So that's why we're here together. And I always like to start with a little bit of gratitude. And so gratitude right now looks like how wonderful it is that you could all join us on a late afternoon on a Monday. I think this is a great way to start a week. I hope you will agree that we could be in this space and have people who can get it set up for us and make sure that all the technology works well. We have wonderful refreshments, which are brought to us by our two co-sponsors, Elders in Action and AARP Oregon. So we also want to be very thankful to them for supporting this event. Thank you. Yes. And then just, being with colleagues and friends and new acquaintances, doing really important, noble work. And that we have the causes and conditions in our lives that we actually get to spend time doing this kind of stuff together. It's really cool. So we have quite an agenda for you today. I hope you all received an agenda when you came in, and also an evaluation form. I know a couple of you need to leave early. And so if you would be sure to do the evaluation and drop it at the table on your way out. There's a question that we forgot to put on the evaluation form that is really important. So if you could right now just jot it down, and that is, how did you find out about this event? Besides the potty press in the bathroom stall. What are the other ways that you found out about this? And if you could just give us a little bit of that information, that would be great. So you know that we have a very special guest that's at the center of this event, and that's Ashton Applewhite. And we are offering her book as a fundraiser for the Gerontology student group. And I actually should mention that this whole event was made possible by the Ageless Network, which is PCC Gerontology Program Student Club. Wonderful student club that I think is a model, really, for other colleges and universities, as well as the ASPCC Diversity Fund. And Jan, who I'm going to introduce in just a minute, is going to tell you more about where this wonderful event came from. So Ashton is our keynoter, and then before and after we have folks who are going to talk to you about various aspects of not only this event, but also ongoing efforts that many of us are involved in, and many of you in the audience are involved in as well, to end ageism. So do you have any needs or questions for me before I introduce? Oh, yes, I forgot the most important thing. Where are the bathrooms? The women's bathroom is out this door, down the hall, so turn right out the door, down the hall, and then turn left, and it'll be on your right. The men's bathroom's right out this door, and pretty much straight out. Where's is there a gender-neutral bathroom close by?
Only inside the CC building.
So inside the CC building, there's a gender-neutral bathroom. We're going to take 2 official breaks. So 2 15-minute breaks, and then I'm going to try to be really sensitive to giving you a little moment to breathe and maybe stand up, because there's also going to be a lot of information coming at you. And we want to be very understanding and humane as we're doing this good work together. One last announcement I was just reminded to make. A wonderful instructor who I haven't met yet, Larry Hansen, is retiring. And he's been in the program for a while teaching
Supporting End of Life.
Which I'll be teaching,
yes.
So I should know the name of it, Supporting End of Life. But he has this amazing background, spiritual direction, hospice, palliative care, chaplaincy, lots of training and teaching, very long, rich, important career. And if any of you have worked with him as colleagues or students, there is a memory book in the back that you can, if you turn around, you'll see the memory book being held up. If you want to just stop by at some point and jot a really lovely note to him, that would be great. Is that all the announcements?
I think so.
Okay. How's the space? How's the sound? How's the light? Good. I am the age-friendly coordinator after all. I must make sure everybody feels okay. So, Jan,
yes,
come on up.
All right.
So, you know Jan, most of you know Jan, but let me just tell you a little bit about her. Jan and I have been friends for quite a while, 15 years at least. So I've known her since she started this amazing program here at PCC. So she directs the Gerontology program, and she teaches many of the core courses. She's been a leading force, not just at Sylvania Campus, but throughout the whole Portland Community College system for initiatives to address the needs of older workers and students returning to college to recharge or find a new passion, enhance their skills, and harness their energies for new career directions. So for over the last 18 years, she's overseen the development of several short-term, job-related certificates in diverse areas to prepare professionals and workers at all levels to deliver high-quality services, resources, care, and advocacy for olders to live the lives they imagine and embrace. And this is a really important feature of the gerontology program here. There's not only the really wonderful core curriculum, but all of these different certification pathways people can follow. I think it's remarkable. She and her faculty also recently rebranded the program, Gerontology rebranding, which signaled a re-energized commitment by Jan and the faculty to really take the program to the next level. So that's Jan.
Thank you. So, I need to adjust here a little bit. Gee, then I'd have to use both of my hands. I don't know. That might be too complicated. Okay, so yeah, I think, make sure that I'm at the right angle. So you can hear me? Yes? All right. So welcome, everyone. And it's so great to see all of you, so many familiar faces from PCC and from the broader community, as a signal that you are ready to be part of the solution to end ageism. I'd like to give you some perspective on why the PCC Gerontology program is launching this End Ageism campaign now in our 18th year. In a time when many gerontology programs around the country are closing or confronting serious challenges to stay afloat, our program, despite a slight enrollment decline, which PCC as a whole is experiencing at the moment, is thriving by multiple measures. So what is behind our success? The first factor has to do with our curriculum and the career pathways certificates that make up our associate's degree. Rather than focusing energy on only the traditional career paths, our program stays ahead of the aging population curve by incorporating new ideas that propel our cutting-edge curriculum. We are recognized as a national leader in the field and are helping to shape tomorrow's gerontology programs and gerontologists. The second factor has to do with our amazing students, many of whom are here, most of whom are encore learners looking to become encore earners. 2/3 of our students are 40 and older, and over half of them are 50 and older. To figure out how to support these students, we developed, from listening to these wonderful students, what we call ELAs, Encore Learner Adaptations, which include many things like empowering advising, intentional internships, job skills workshops, the Aging Mind course that my colleague Roger Anunsen teaches, peer mentors, the Student Club Ageless Network, which is co-sponsoring today's event, community partner networking opportunities, and much more. We want to make sure that our students are successful here, ready to transfer for more education if they want it, and ready to get into their dream job. And I'm happy to report that at least 90% or more of our students are successful at all three of those achievements. Right. Very important. All right. And the third factor has to do with our focus on age and ageism. As we strive to bring a culture change, and those of you in the field of gerontology know what I'm talking about when I mention culture change, at PCC, as well as the communities where our students intern and where they will eventually work. To that end, we led a district-wide task force on aging, which occurred actually 10 years ago as we speak, 10 years ago, 2006, 2007, which was endorsed by the PCC Cabinet and Board of Directors to explore how PCC could respond to the educational and workforce needs of our state's elders, support older learners at PCC, and also address the needs and desires of the aging population generally. We held 2 district-wide conferences that brought in national leaders and experts, which included my now colleague, Mike Faber, who is then in Michigan, and as well as our community partners, some of whom are here today, like AARP and Elders in Action and others. We sponsored a first-of-its-kind survey of older students at PCC to determine what could make their experience better. It was called Boomers Go to College, and my colleague Jenny Sasser was also one of the co-authors and kind of facilitators of that effort. And a second report, Oregon Gray Matters, How Oregon's Older Workers Will Save Oregon's Economy. As a result of the 2-year Task Force on Aging effort, our advising and counseling system, as well as other student services like enrollment and registration, were initiated. A credit for prior learning task force was convened, and PCC's Workforce Development Division undertook employer and employee focused programs to support hiring, retention, and thriving of older workers. But many of the initiatives we hoped to come to fruition were unfortunately not adequately funded, and much of the progress we had hoped to make was stalled with changes of staffing, budgeting, and so on. So what were the obstacles to genuine culture change that we were seeking? What kept the issues confronting older learners from rising to be a top priority across the district? The short answer is twofold: internalized ageism and an institutionalized ageism. Internalized ageism is that prejudice against our older selves, which exists and is alive and well, as we know, in all institutions, including PCC. And we all know how difficult it is to acknowledge it and to uproot it from our consciousness. And this is something I know we'll hear much more about today. Institutionalized ageism is even more difficult to identify and call out, something we know from diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts for any ism. Here is one example of many that illustrates how institutionalized ageism works. During the time of the Task Force on Aging, Gerontology was able to make a convincing case to our federal Perkins Funding Committee that our older students constituted an at-risk population that deserved special support. This limited yet highly significant funding ensured special programs for our students, like having learning disability testing performed for free. And for those of you who know anything about it, it's usually like $1,000 or more to get such testing. And generally supported the Perkins funds generally supported our intensive advising efforts in general. 3 years ago, however, this funding was suddenly withdrawn with no explanation and no provision for us to make our case. The reason? Not ageism, of course. Not that older students weren't worthy of having this support. Rather, the committee decided that only programs that had collaborative curriculum and career pathway agreements with high school programs would henceforth receive Perkins fundings. And guess what? No high school in the region offers gerontology courses. So go figure. That is just one example of many, but I think it illustrates how difficult it is and the challenges that are facing us as an institution, as well as all of the organizations of which we are a part. These are the kinds of issues a broad-based campaign to end ageism would have to address. Change ahead. 2 years ago, thanks to what Roger Anunsen calls a consilience of our students and faculty and some serendipitous happenings, we realized it was time for a mindset shift. Again, something you are going to hear a lot about today. In terms of mindset, I've always been personally partial to Wonder Woman, the power pose, you know, whenever you go. And that has gotten me through some really difficult situations and kind of kept me going with a positive mindset. But as our deliberations shifted to the bigger picture of how were we going to address the ageism issues that we were confronting and what we wanted to do something about, we started situating ourselves in the broader gerosphere and realized it was time to change locations. And that led me to adopt a new role, to do my part to effect culture change through a social movement. I have now gladly assumed the mantle of the Gero Commander of the PCC School of Geronautical Engineering and have welcomed the accolades and the support of all of my Geronaut colleagues in taking on this role and great responsibility. The Geronaut Pledge, as I know many of you in the room have already taken it, is one that we promise to explore the strange new world of extended longevity, to seek out new lifestyles and new culture changes, and to go boldly where no Geronaut has gone before. So, yes, and they're doing the Geronaut salute there in the back. So we'll have a little get together later in the program. All right, so this Geronaut Pledge and the whole Geronaut branding and the empowering sense that it gave us has really energized us and given us, you know, a lot of new ideas, a lot of creativity that we've been working on, and it really has prepared the ground for the liftoff of a new strategy, a broader campaign to which we are inviting you today. #EndAgeism.
So is anybody tweeting right now about the event? Okay,
#Ageism.
so if you do, please use the hashtag. I tweeted earlier today, so I don't want to be the only one out there tweeting about the event. So hey, Roger, come on up. So our next fantastic speaker is Roger Anunsen. And we're running a little bit off schedule, but I think 20 minutes is going to work okay. I will be probably standing up there staring at you the whole time, and I will give you a signal.
She'll be very
Staring
subtle.
at you, yes. So how many of you know Roger? Okay. Well, not all of you do, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about him. And I've known Roger now for over a decade. Yes, which is really cool. We were children together, yes. Roger is a brain health educator and program consultant who's been working in the field of memory and aging since 2001. He began as a part-time van driver for an assisted living facility. And that's kind of how he found his calling, which I think is wonderful, his calling and his encore passion, helping make long lives worth living. That became the mission of Mind Ramp, which is the consulting company that he and Michael Patterson started and have really developed over the last decade or so to educate the world about brain health and the new frontier of the gerosphere. His educational method was developed over the past decade of hands-on experience teaching older adults, gerontology students, and healthcare professionals how to apply the latest breakthroughs of neuroscience. Roger presented the MindWrap method at the first Global Conference on Aging at the University of Oxford, conducted a sold-out 7-hour brain health seminar. 7 hours. That's pretty intense, those poor brains. At the Smithsonian Institution, and this spring he presented a guest lecture at the University of Southern California's Davis School of Gerontology, which is probably the premier gerontology program in higher education in the United States. So here's Roger.
And I'll tell you, it was the Smithsonian that I lost my voice. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out how the aging mind can fit into ageism, and Jan had the perfect lead-in. Is that good? Okay. Is that okay? The perfect lead-in is internalized ageism. I realized that when Jan started using the internalized ageism as one of the two items within her slide, I thought what I want to do in the next 19 minutes, Jenny, is to strip away the myths about your brain and where neuroscience is right now. So let me tell you that we're in an extended period of history, of longevity that was never predicted 50 years ago, 40 years ago. And we call it the next frontier. The next frontier is one which will either be glorious or it might be a nightmare if all the boomers' brains and bodies live at different paces. What if the boomers' bodies outlive their brains by 10 to 20 years? Who's going to take care of them is what Washington, D.C. and other capitals want to know. The goal now is to educate everyone that we can about the truth about brain health and what's coming up in this new frontier, because our species has never done this before. We don't know what to do. And what Jan is doing is building a brand new rocket ship with people like Masaki and others who are coming here to get educated. And what we found, Jan, at USC is that they are going to want to know what we're doing because we're under the radar, we're an incubator, and we're doing innovative things that are planning for the next frontier, not the last frontier. So let me take you on a quick journey through this gerosphere of aging. We think that this is a good start, that we're going where nobody's been before, so nobody can tell us what to do, but what we can do is get the excitement of all these geronauts that I see smiling, that they're proud to be not a gerontology student, but a geronaut who's going to go do things because they have a passion. And none of you would be here hoping to end ageism as a movement if you didn't have the heart of a geronaut. This is a fact you need to take away. 95% of everything humans have ever learned about the human brain was learned since Mount St. Helens blew up. 30 years of explosive knowledge, and almost all of it, except for the quest for a pill, has been magnificent. This is a quote from 2005, and when I found this, I wanted to know if it was true that neuroscience is the most exciting frontier of human knowledge since the Renaissance. There is no question about it. No field of study has ever come so quickly and so disruptively to the old myths of aging. We're going to cover some of those today because the Renaissance, in this explosion of knowledge which changed the course of human history, has 3 words that apply to your brain as an older person. And when I strip away the myths, you're ready to then end ageism. Knowledge is power. If you know how your brain works, how it fails, and what you have to do, you'll realize that nobody has enough money to buy their way out of cognitive decline. Not Bill Gates and not Warren Buffett, but if you know what to do, a little bit at a time, it's manageable. These are the breakthroughs I like to point out. This is a pill that isn't here yet. I see a few young people. Anybody here over the age of 50? Okay. Anybody under the age of 50? The rest of you? Okay. The pill might get here in their lifetime. The rest of us, it's probably not going to get here. So our choice is simple. It's not an essay. It's a multiple choice. It's either or. Either you do something or you do nothing. We choose in our department to do something and add 5 somethings and 10 somethings. We don't drink brain tonic, but this once was sold over the counter. This is Coca-Cola's ad in the 1890s. This ideal brain tonic is a myth. It always has been, and maybe it always will be, because of the complexity of the brain that's being uncovered, and one is neuroplasticity. When I started this quest 15 years ago, very few people really understood neuroplasticity, including the scientists. Norman Deutsch, in the seminal book on neuroplasticity, took away all the myths. It's not a theory. You will change your brain today a little bit at a time. And the harder you work and the longer you work becoming a lifelong learner, you will continue to change your brain. It's always under construction. But look at the words that are added today. Activity dependent. If you are not actively getting your brain healthier, then it's going to probably start sinking. There's positive and negative plasticity. Ageism is negative plasticity. Ending ageism as a whole would be a glorious positive communication between you and others. Everybody wiggle your big toe. That is your brain. That's part of your brain. So it's really a body-mind connection. If you can keep your brain healthy, the body will follow as much as possible. But even if your wheels come off like my dad's did, if your engine is still going, that's the goal, is to keep your brain healthy. The next theory I want to talk about is the reserve theory. It's one that Columbia and the Nun study really brought into the forefront, that what you're doing in school, what you're doing with your passion to learn things the rest of your life, that is building a safety net. So when you do have, years from now, a TIA, a couple of strokes, you hit your head and you have a brain injury, if you have a challenge as an older person and you don't have a reserve, you don't have the safety net. So having that lifelong learning ends up having a cascade of chemicals that will come into your brain under this emerging theory. This theory is that if you can get certain chemicals and you control the chemicals that will get into your brain moment by moment, they cascade throughout your brain first and the rest of your body. And I'll give you a couple of examples of how we believe that there'll be a replacement of the chemicals that we now get from pharmaceuticals, or they'll complement the pharmaceuticals, because we can generate now with new studies the chemicals that are going to be in your brain, especially older brains that might be sedentary. They might need to have that joy of surprise. This is the cutting edge. This is the one that came out 2 years ago from Toronto. That's the title of this article, The Neurochemistry of Music. Everybody here has a song that I would say is your all-time favorite, and you only get one. If you're thinking of that song, the one song that you want played when you're in the hospital with a broken ankle and you're bored with TV, it will lower, if it's the right song, the chemicals that are released when you hear that song will lower your need for opioids. They will raise the oxytocin if it's something that you have that's with your child or with a loved one. So music can generate chemicals in your brain, but so can other things. Think of something that is sweet and gooey. It would be your favorite dessert. Just thinking of that will generate a cascade of chemicals. This is an article on the front page of Mind magazine 1 year ago, and this is how music can heal the brain. Not can it, but it does heal the brain. That's the new wave of having elders who aren't worried about their brain. They're excited about the brain future because they know what to do. This is a picture. Anybody know who this is? My students do, don't you? It's Albert Einstein. We know that we have to take a little bit of a brain break. You've been here for 25, 35 minutes. So a brain break is going to have you think of something else. What's your first grade teacher's name? Raise your hand if you know your first grade teacher's name. Very good. What is it? You're right. Okay. Sarah, what's yours? Okay. And when someone says it's Sister so-and-so, their brains, if we had a scanner on it, would flood with chemicals. How about this one? Your first pet's name. What is it? Cleo. One more person up there. Peggy. What is it? When you think of either Cleo or Snoopy, that has even more chemical reaction because of these two parts of your brain. The amygdala, which is your emotional center, and your hippocampus, which is your memory maker. So we know that we can generate chemicals, and the goal is to have you continue to generate those the rest of your life. This is my doorway into the mindset theory. Gene Cohen was a mentor of ours before he passed away, and what he did was to come up with a brand new model of your brain. Those over 50 are now labeled by neuroscience as mature minds. Before this book came out, we had old minds, old brains. The younger folks had young brains. We have mature minds, so what do they have? Immature minds. That's exactly right. Everybody hold up your fists. You have two hemispheres. Put your fingers out here and move them together. Move them together. These are the corpus callosum. Those young folks, and I see a few around there, stop moving. The rest of us keep moving. At 50 or above, your brain goes into all-wheel drive and your brain starts talking to each other because it matures until about age 50. When Gene Cohen wrote the book, he subtitled it The Power and Potential of the Mature Mind. The mature mind has so much potential because science is now finally studying it. He calls it asset-based. We work with not the deficits that you don't have any longer when you're 50 and above, because these youngsters, these immature minds, are faster than we are. But we can do things because we're 50 and 60 that they can't do until they're on this earth for 5 decades. It's the wiring that allows us to use all of our resources. They will answer a problem quicker than we will and go on to the next one. We'll be slower, but we'll get the answer right more often, and they'll be wrong and not even know it. We then clean up the messes that were made by these fast but immature minds, asset-based. Once we're looking in the windshield instead of the rear view mirror of our life and worrying about what we can't do, Gene Cohen theorized that once you have that inner push to go forward, you're going to use the creative power of your brain to problem solve and make life better just by your attitude. He calls it a mindset, a creative aging mindset. And the takeaway is to reset it in order to end ageism, so we can focus on the ability of the boomers to have a future that is not a silver tsunami, but as Jeanette said, it's a silver reservoir, one that ought to be tapped in and helping to end ageism once and for all. Gene also speculated, and now studies are showing, that once we get to be 50, we have what's called an inner push. That restless feeling within your brain and your heart that you want to make a difference. And as you get to be 60 and 70, that difference of going back to school, like some of the folks I'm pointing to out here, they go back to school not just because they want to learn something for fun, they want to learn it to empower them and to use that creative skill that their older brain has, which they didn't have before. And that inner push drives you to help others. At this point, everybody's been sitting for almost an hour, so either raise your arms up or stand up. Stand up's actually better. Everybody stand up if you can. I give up 30 seconds here because your brain will turn from a sponge to Teflon unless I take a brain break. Okay, sit down. I sort of whispered. I whispered to Jenny that we're going to take a 30-second break, and then I have to ask you a question. When I had you stand up and sit down, that was healthy for your brain because you got a little more energy, blood flow. When we teach the class, The Aging Mind, we always use 2 words. Be courageously honest about your brain. If you're not honest about your brain, you better figure out why wouldn't you want to be courageously honest. So answer this question and raise your hand. Be honest. Can you lift 100 pounds? Raise your hand if you can lift 100 pounds. Okay, the rest of you who didn't raise your hand, how did you just stand up if you can't lift 100 pounds? This is a mindset that if you believe that you can raise 100 pounds and it helps your brain, then tonight when you're watching TV and the commercial is a bad commercial, you don't just stand up once and sit down. Your brain is what I call a smidgen better. It's not going to stop the symptoms of Alzheimer's, but if you did that for the rest of your life, 1 time per night, maybe twice per night, to stand up, you're going to make a difference. My dad said that when you change a mindset, you have to do that with a smidgen at a time. And he said this throughout my life, and as he was just before he died after a second stroke, he said, use this. A smidgen isn't much unless you do a smidgen every day. You do 7 a week, 30 a month, you'll make a difference in this world, and you'll make a difference in your brain. Having that mindset that everything counts, you're going to be able to add those up, because it is not one thing that counts, it's everything you do counts either for you or against you. So you just pile up the smidgens and live a wonderful life. Here's the mindsets that we roll through in the class. These are the takeaways that Harvard said is the #1 mindset you have to improve your memory. What's the one thing? They said it's believe in yourself, based on the neuroscience, that if you don't believe that what you're going to be doing, because a science study says this helps your brain, if you don't believe it, you will fail in doing whatever that is. So if you can educate yourself on what really is the evidence-based science, not a pill, not a tonic, but it's hard work that is combined with other things you do, you can believe that this is going to be the wave of the future that will end ageism, because you won't have that myth that you can't. Carol Dweck's mindset theory, for anybody who wants to dive, this is the pool to go in first. Written several decades ago, she had what was called a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, and I believe everybody here has a growth mindset. You don't know what you can accomplish until you try. You're not going to be limited, you'll be limitless. Ellen Langer is another one to watch closely. It's the image you have of yourself. And her study, the counterclockwise study, is going to be made into a movie, and how she had people have a different image of themselves, and once they got that image of themselves younger, the biomarkers of their body and their brain went backward in time, counterclockwise. That's the image that our geronauts have when they come back to school and get hooked on that passion that they can learn and create a new career. The counterclockwise study is one that was at the time an outlier, but now it's been replicated over and again, that you have a mindset that you're younger, your body and brain will get younger. Chambermaids who were instructed that what they do is physical fitness, they just by having that in their mindset, they lowered all of their body mass index, they became cognitively better aware, simply because they were told by experts, this is how many calories you burn during a course of you working. The keys to success are looking at your choices. Each one of these are choices. You can be open-minded or closed-minded, positive or negative. When you have those positive mindsets and those creative mindsets, your path is out ahead of you. So we recommend Carol Dweck. We go back a century to the roots of psychology, and that's when the open-minded mindset or attitude works. Next, the mindfulness. You can either be mindless or you can be mindful. And all the work in the mindfulness field ends up supporting the older person who is going to have that feeling that they are going to be able to have their ability to lower the emotions work in their favor. The stress is something that we used to think you want to eliminate stress, but our cogwheels, cognitive wheels, has a stress management. Because this book, The Upside of Stress, shows you have to have some stress. Just like when you're lifting something to make your arms stronger, you put stress on muscles. The same holds true for stress on your brain. And then the final book I'll mention is Positivity. And this work out of North Carolina really takes a leap forward, moving and showing that even if you have a negative mindset that you can't, by learning how your brain can rewire and get into a positive mindset, you are set up for future success. And I think the biggest barrier that I've told Ashton is one that we're behind her move to end ageism, not in our lifetime, in this decade. We want to understand that as long as those ageism barriers are there for us internally, the older group, and all of those youngers who someday will be, they hope, an older group, it's time to just blow up the ageism. So we'll end with this. The best way to predict your future is to create it, whether it's your health future or the future of your mindset. You have to do the hard work. You have to create it. So thank you. Are we on track? Yes. Let's get rolling. Thank you.
So one question I had when I was listening to Roger that I just want to sort of put out there, because we're going to have plenty of time for discussion later, and we're going to take a break in a minute. But so the two images of an older person looking in the mirror and seeing a younger self, and then Roger made the connection to how having a internalized sense of oneself as younger leads to biomarkers that are younger. That seems to me to be a manifestation of ageism, because I want to be able to look in the mirror and see myself as I am reflected back now and have rock star biomarkers because I'm present to who I am now, and I don't need to have an internal image that's 3 decades ago. So I think there's just something to look at there. Okay. Well, wow, that was a lot of technical stuff. So Ashton, we're going to get started. I'm going to introduce you, and then you can take it away, and when you're ready for Q&A, you can let me know, and I'll facilitate for you.
Terrific. How's the volume?
It's good.
Hi, everyone.
This is Ashton. So, author and activist Ashton Applewhite has been recognized by the New York Times, National Public Radio, and the American Society on Aging as an expert on ageism. She blogs at This Chair Rocks, which I know many of you follow. It's fantastic. She speaks widely, has written for Harper's and Playboy, and is the voice of Yo, Is This Ageist? In 2015, she was included in Salt magazine's list of 100 inspiring women, along with Aung San Suu Kyi, Angelina Jolie, Elizabeth Warren, Germaine Greer, Naomi Klein, and other remarkable activists who are committed to social change. Ashton's work is a call to wake up to the ageism in and around us, embrace a more accurate and positive view of growing older, and push back against the forces that frame it as decline. She's the author of This Chair Rocks, a manifesto against ageism, and the book is here in the back if you want to take a look at it. Okay, take it away, Ashton.
Thank you. So my talk is called Let's Rock This Chair. No to ageism, yes to aging. So it doesn't make much sense to go through life pretending that something that's happening to you is never going to happen to you, but that is how most of us behave when it comes to getting older. What do you hear people say about it? Hey, it beats the alternative. What does that old saw actually mean? The only thing worse than being old is being dead. I used to feel that way too. That was back when old to me meant sad and sick. And I didn't want to think about it till I had to. And when it crossed my mind, I flipped the channel. But then I started a project called So When Are You Going to Retire? And began interviewing people over 80 who work and reading about longevity. And it was easy to find older workers. People were always telling me I should meet the guy who sold ices in the park, or the piano teacher downstairs, or their Aunt Lucille. And I met doctors and janitors and artists and Walmart cashiers, and the strangest thing happened. The more I learned, the bigger the gap that emerged between what I just assumed it would be like to be that old and the reality. So why the disconnect? What were some of my assumptions about what lay ahead? The grimmest assumption was that I would end my days drooling under a bad Van Gogh print in some ghastly institutional hallway. And in fact, the percentage of Americans over 65 in nursing homes is only 4%, and it's dropping. It's down from 5% in the last decade. Over half of the oldest old, which is ages 85 and up, can go about their everyday activities without any assistance at all. Another preconception, and this is the really scary one, dementia lurks. But if you subtract that 4% of Americans over 65, 90% of the remainder is cognitively fit. I mean, Alzheimer's is a terrible disease, and the odds do increase with age, but it is not typical of aging. The real epidemic is anxiety over memory loss. At the other end of the spectrum, about 20% of people escape cognitive decline entirely. We all know some of those super sharp 90-year-olds, right? Most of us will experience some decline in specific abilities, but the brain of a healthy older person can do almost everything that a much younger brain is capable of, and it can do some things better. It just takes a little longer. I also assume that old people don't have sex. Sexual activity does tend to decrease with age, but my 74-year-old friend Robin is having the best sex of her life, and she is not an anomaly. Retirement homes are hotbeds of romance. Thank you, Viagra. People who make sex a priority and embrace a broader notion of the forms it can take think slow, whole body, playful, can enjoy deeply satisfying sex for as long as they want. I also assumed that old people were depressed because, they were old and they were going to die soon. It turns out that people are happiest at the beginnings and the ends of their lives. It's called the U-shaped happiness curve, and it's been borne out by many reputable studies in the US and around the world. And it's independent of socioeconomic status and marital status. As we turn 80, we get better at dealing with negative emotions like anger, envy, and fear. I bet Roger talked about that. And we experience less social anxiety. You don't have to be a Buddhist or a billionaire to enjoy these changes. The aging process itself confers them on the healthy brain. They are the neurological underpinnings of that curve. Slowly, skeptically, gears grinding, my point of view began to shift. And I realized that old age was almost certainly going to be different and way better than the grim slide into depression, diapers, and puffy white shoes of my nightmares. Although I have to admit, I am still worried about the shoes. So why the disconnect? How come these facts take so many people by surprise? Because of ageism, which I define as treating people differently, an individual or a group of people on the basis of how old we think they are. Ageism is the last socially sanctioned prejudice. Sexist or racist comments don't get a pass anymore, but who even blinks when older people are described as foolish or feeble or even repulsive? We experience ageism anytime someone assumes that we're too old for something, a task, a relationship, a haircut, instead of finding out who we are and what we're capable of. Ageism is to age what racism is to race. Both are socially constructed ideas that have changed over time and that serve a social and economic purpose. They're not about how we look. They're about how people in power assign meaning to how we look. Stereotyping underlies ageism the way it does all isms, the assumption that all members of a group are the same. It's ageist to assume that all olders are frail or wise, or that kids are like that. Ageism cuts both ways. It's why people think everyone in a retirement home is the same age, old, right? Even though residents can span 4 decades. Can you imagine people thinking that way about a group of 20 to 60-year-olds? It's why the last box on those marketing checklists, 18 to 26 and 27 to 39, they end at 65 plus, as though everyone over 65 buys the same stuff and does the same things. Stereotypes are always a mistake, but especially when it comes to age, because as the years pass, we grow more different from one another. It's why geriatricians say if you've seen one 80-year-old, you've seen one 80-year-old. People aren't born ageist, but it starts in early childhood, around the same time that attitudes about race and gender start to form. And kids are exposed to negative stereotypes in all kinds of ways, from children's books, where there's like either the crone or hag or cranky grandpa or the kindly old person just sitting in a rocking chair, and then all the ads for products to keep us young. Older people can be the most ageist of all because we've had a lifetime of exposure to these messages. Like everyone else, I internalized these prejudices without even realizing it. I had to acknowledge it and confront them and stop colluding. Senior moment quips, for example, they used to seem cute. I stopped making them when it dawned on me that when I lost the car keys in high school, I didn't call it a junior moment. You hear people say, I don't feel old all the time. What they mean is, I don't feel ugly, or useless, or helpless, or any of the other bad things for which old has become an all-purpose placeholder. We experience those feelings and emotions our whole life long. They're not a function of age. Ageism is why teenagers get no respect, and why 20-somethings who aren't having peak lives every minute get depressed, because that's supposed to be the pinnacle of your life, right? And why 30-year-old women freak out about being over the hill, and why 40-year-olds can't get job interviews. Ageism affects everyone. We're all worried about some aspect of getting old, whether of running out of money or getting sick or ending up alone, and those fears are legitimate and real. But it never dawns on most of us that the experience of reaching old age, or middle age, or even just aging past youth can be better or worse depending on the culture in which it takes place. And this one is grotesquely youth-centric. Ageism feeds on our denial, our reluctance to admit that we will get old, that we are aging every day, right? Everyone wakes up a day older. It is denial when old pals cringe at public mention of how long they've known each other instead of delighting in it. It's denial when people bridle at being politely offered a seat on the bus. It's denial when we snap up products that tout their anti-aging properties or promise agelessness. Aging means living, and living means aging. If you're not aging, you're dead. Denial blinds us to ageism in ourselves and perpetuates it in 1,000 ways. When we see people as other than us, right? Old people belong to some group that we're never going to belong to. Other color, other nationality, other religion, their welfare seems less of a human right. That's why 5 out of 6 incidents of elder abuse go unreported. That's one of the reasons. Another reason is that older people have internalized those negative stereotypes too and start to think that they're not deserving of care or respect. We don't talk about elder abuse, and neither do many victims who are embarrassed by their vulnerability, ashamed to ask for help, and think they may not deserve it. And that is internalized ageism, right? When those negative stereotypes become part of our identity unconsciously. When labels are hard to read, or handrails are missing, or containers are hard to open, we think, I should be more limber, I should be stronger, I should be better prepared. We think these obstacles are our fault instead of the result of crappy design or lousy public policy. Aging is an accomplishment. But in this culture, we feel shame instead of pride. And this paves the way for a host of unhealthy behaviors, from denial to contempt. That's what's going on when people refuse to use walkers or wheelchairs because the stigma is so great, even when it means never leaving home. We blame our own aging, our own failure to age successfully, instead of blaming the ageism that makes these natural transitions shameful and the discrimination that makes these barriers acceptable. It is not loving a man that makes life harder for gay guys. It's homophobia. It's not having a vagina that makes life harder for women. It's sexism. And it is not the passage of time that makes aging in America so much harder than it has to be. It's ageism. But until feminism taught them new scripts, women blamed themselves for their second-class status instead of systematic discrimination. There is enormous overlap between ageism and sexism. Surprise. Also with ableism, although denial makes us act as though people with disabilities never grow old and old people never become disabled. The more clearly we see these social forces at work in ourselves and in the world at large, the easier it is to envision alternative, more positive, and more accurate narratives. The longer we wait to challenge them, the more damage it does to ourselves and to our place in the world. A growing body of evidence shows that attitudes towards aging have an actual, measurable, physical effect on how we age. There's no inherent reason for the effect to be negative, but an ageist culture tells us that wrinkles are ugly, old people are incompetent, it's sad to be old. And when we assimilate these myths, they become part of our identity, and this influences how our brains and our bodies function. In one experiment, social scientists primed a group of college students with negative age stereotypes, words like forgetful, Florida, and bingo. I love bingo. And they flashed these words on a screen too briefly for the students to be consciously aware of them. And then they measured the amount of time that the students walked to the elevator, and the group that had been primed with the negative stereotypes walked to the elevator measurably more slowly than a control group. So imagine the effect on older people for whom the terms are more relevant and more likely to become self-fulfilling prophecies. People with more positive feelings about aging, they behave differently from the ones who are convinced that growing old means becoming useless or pathetic. They do better on memory tests, they walk faster, and they are more likely to recover fully from severe disability. And they actually live longer, and not just a little bit longer, an average of 7.5 years longer. Everyone agrees that health has the biggest effect on how we age, and certainly on how much it costs. So think what a national anti-ageism campaign would do to extend not just our lifespan, but our health span. The workplace, is where lots of people, men in particular, first become aware of age discrimination. Workers at both ends of the spectrum face discrimination. Millennials are criticized for having no work ethic and needing their hands held, so they have trouble getting a foothold. In Silicon Valley, engineers are getting Botox and hair transplants before key interviews, and these are educated, skilled, white guys in their 30s. So imagine the effect further down the food chain. Older people are damned if we work for taking jobs away from younger people. That's a fallacy called the lump of labor that economists have debunked countless times. And we're damned if we don't work for mooching off younger workers. And we're damned if we're laid off because experience is a liability in an ageist world. Longer lives require working longer and saving more. And yet age discrimination in the workplace is on the rise. Workers at the top of their game find themselves unceremoniously shown the door, perhaps being treated differently from younger employees, promoted less, or excluded from key meetings or opportunities. And it is incumbent on us to keep up with technology and social media and to keep an open mind. Your boss may be young enough to be your grandchild, but that doesn't mean she has nothing to teach you. It's just as important to call out discrimination when we encounter it and question the reasons that employers use to justify it. That older workers are less productive, less dependable, less committed, less teachable, less creative, to name a few. Not one of these stereotypes is true. Push back, and we transform the landscape into a more equitable one for workers of all ages. It won't be easy, but the notion of retirement is already in radical transition. The more flexible arrangements that older workers require also benefit students, families with young kids, and caregivers for people of all ages. It drives me nuts when some clown calls me young lady and expects me to feel complimented, but I didn't know why until I started thinking deeply about it. Because it's embarrassing to be called out as older until we quit being embarrassed about it, and it's not healthy to go through life dreading our futures. Everyone wakes up a day older. The sooner we accept that, the sooner we move from denial to acceptance, and maybe even all the way to embrace, the better off we'll be. That's when we overthrow what geriatrician Bill Thomas calls the tyranny of still. The delusion that as long as we're still working, still dating younger people, still running up the stairs, we can stop the clock. As if that would be a good thing. Why on earth do we stop celebrating personal growth, the all-important ability to adapt to and learn from life after middle age? It's dumb and it's punitive. Everything changes. We contain all the ages we have ever been. There is no such thing as acting your age because we all age at different rates, mentally, physically, and socially. It's important to tell the truth when someone asks your age, and then to ask what difference the number makes, right? What changed in their head once they had a number and why? Because chronological age is a lousy indicator of almost anything about a person. I'm 63. I know I'm not young. I don't see myself as old. And I know a lot of people who feel the same way. We're in the grips of this cruel paradox. We aspire to grow old, and yet we dread the prospect. And we spend a lot of energy sustaining the illusion that the old are somehow not us. So that's why I've become an old person in training, a phrase I appropriated from geriatrician Joanne Lynn. Becoming an old person in training bridges that us-them divide and loosens the grip of that exhausting illusion. It means ditching preconceptions, looking at and listening to the olders among us with an open mind, and re-envisioning our place among them. The sooner we make this imaginative leap, the better. All change starts with awareness, and we can change ourselves. Unlearning is hard. It is not easy to undo beliefs we've held all our lives. The women's movement called it consciousness raising. Think of it as a mindset alteration. Some places to start. Look for ways in which you are ageist instead of for evidence that you aren't. You can't change bias unless you're aware of it, and everyone's biased some of the time. Talk to people significantly older than younger than you, and listen carefully. If you don't, many of them, seek them out. Like if you're at a social event, go sit next to or talk to the person who's the most different from you in age. And the next time you wonder whether an outing or an outfit or an attitude is age appropriate, reconsider the question. There's no such thing. What would a truly intergenerational world look like? How can we work together to bring it about? Change ripples outwards when we point out ageist behaviors and beliefs in the world around us without being a jerk about it. That's the hard part. Some places to start. Train yourself to notice when everyone in a group is the same age. And unless there's a legitimate reason, speak up about it. Assume capacity, not incapacity. Don't assume someone is too old or too young to weigh in on a topic or take on a responsibility. And if you're feeling ambitious, start a consciousness raising group. There's a tool on my website, a booklet called Who Me Ageist, that you can download for free. And this powerful tool catalyzed the women's movement in the 1960s and 70s, and we can put it to use. Changing the culture is a tall order. You hear people say, "Don't call me old," all the time. Or stuff like, "My mom's 94, but she's not old." Someone said that to me recently, as though it was contagious. But culture is far from fixed. Look at gender. Western culture used to view it as a rigid binary, male or female, but we now understand that it is far more fluid. If gender can be conceived of this way, why not age, which is inherently, obviously, a spectrum? There's no line on the sand, no crossover between young and old after which it's all downhill. What does experience tell us? Anyone in the room have any fun over 40? Working together, we can overturn the grotesque notion that 2/3 of life is decline. Expect pushback. Social change is unsettling. It's worth it. What kind of a world do we want to grow old in? And for our children and grandchildren, who may well live to be 100, to inherit? If marriage equality is here to stay, why not age equality? If gay pride has gone mainstream and millions of Americans now take pride in identifying as disabled, why not age pride? The only reason that idea sounds outlandish is that this is the first time you've encountered it. It won't be the last. Longevity is here to stay. Everyone is aging. It's time to end ageism. It's time for a radical aging movement, and I trust that everyone in this room will join me in it. Thanks.
Wow. Thank you. That was fantastic.
My pleasure.
Yeah. I need to reflect, but there might be some faster thinkers in the audience.
Those immature minds.
No, because that's ageist also. I'll be the Geropunk police for a minute. No. So any questions, reflections, ideas that come to mind? We have about 10 minutes for discussion with Ashton.
It's never too early and it's never too late to continue your development. My mother went back to school to get her doctorate in conflict resolution when she was 84, and she worked in the field until she died at age 92. It's never too late. Let's keep living, let's keep growing, and let's not get stuck in a rut.
Absolutely. That's what I love about Bill Thomas's idea, that somehow that at a certain point the goal shifts and the measure of successful aging, one of my least favorite terms, becomes how much like our younger selves we remain, which is an impossible and punishing metric, even if it were desirable, and it's not.
I have a question, and this might not really have an answer, but I find that I spot myself being ageist when it comes to dating. In particular, I have kind of a compact amount of life experience in my 31 years, and I tend to prefer dating older people, and I tend to be really skeptical of dating younger people, and then I'm like, that's kind of ageist, but I don't really know exactly how to determine, how do I determine whether or not someone is experientially at my level when I don't know, it's weird.
Well, that assumes that we all learn the same amount from experience. And as though life, the number of years you live is an indicator of how experienced you are. I'm probably going to get some grief for this, but I don't even like the equation of age with wisdom, because I think we've all encountered the wise child. I think age confers experience, but there's lots of older people that don't seem to have learned all that much along the way. So I think you're doing a fantastic job just by posing the question, because that tells me you have an open mind. Where I make this case a lot is to women my age in their 60s, some of whom are divorced or widowed, who are, they want a man their age or a little bit older who's also, solvent, handsome, lives nearby, has a good job and can drive at night. And it's a really small pool. And it gets smaller for straight women as we get older. And I am constantly saying, consider dating someone younger, because age really is not a good indicator of very much about a person. It is in terms of cultural reference points, sure. In terms of, how high that mountain is that you can, scamper up, sure. But there's lots of really fit older people and lots of really out of shape younger people. So we'll let the couch potatoes hang with the couch potatoes of all ages and the hikers hang with the hikers of all ages. So go on that date and see what you have in common and take it from there.
Thanks. Here's a question.
So I'd like to just kind of unpack some terminology. And because I find that there is ageism as there is terminology that's embedded in many of the isms. And I recently heard that calling someone an elder is currently considered offensive. Whereas in my...
Nothing is safe.
Well, there it is. But, in my view, I equate elders to an honorary position, just like children. I mean, I don't know. I mean, so that there's elders, youth, kids. I find myself referring to kids as anyone under 35, and because it's my son. That's my son's age. He's a kid. He's my kid. So, but still, just to be conscious about it. I'd like to have a little discussion about unpacking terminology.
It's indicative of the fact that this new phase of life, people are living so much longer that we don't have good words for it, that, it shows that it's new and it shows that we're not at ease with it. It's funny, the word seniors never crossed your lips. It didn't cross mine either. It's the one in most common use for people over 65, and yet no one likes it. I think it's fantastic to use the word elder if it feels right to you, because it's a term of respect. I don't like the elderly for two reasons. It implies that the elderly form some homogenous group, and also, which is of course not the case, and I've never heard anyone refer to themselves as elderly. So as a good rule of thumb, don't call people something they wouldn't call themselves. As you may have picked up on in the talk, I don't love elder because it's not part of my culture. It's used in Native American cultures, in African American cultures. Got nothing against it. It's not my culture, so it doesn't feel comfortable to me. I feel that the only acceptable thing to call older Americans is older Americans, and I have shortened that to olders as a noun. Ditto younger people, youngers. I like that because it's value neutral and because it emphasizes the spectrum idea. A million people won't call themselves old, which ought to be a perfectly good word, but in an ageist culture, it tends to be derogatory. But most of us will willingly identify as older. And so that sort of, breaks down the denial bit a little bit. And everyone will agree, cotton to being older than someone else and younger than someone else, so that it reinforces the spectrum idea. And I think that's important. I don't know if that answers your question, but ask someone what they want to be called if you're in doubt of what to call them.
Yeah. I believe unity is strength. And I'm glad to be a Geronaut. What I draw from this lecture of today, and many others that have been led by our Geronaut engineer, Jane Abushakrah, is that we all have a chance to make a difference by doing the best of whatever we can and in whatever stage and age that one finds himself or herself in. Thank you so much. I come from Kenya, and as you said, we don't recognize age differences. We grow with our elderly, we treat them with respect because we are taught to respect the elder. And you don't even know whether they are old, even if some are disabled. You don't even know they are disabled because you seeing them being the way they are. Until when I came over here, I saw that there is a lot of difference. Sincerely, we can change. We can make people accept us, and we accept them too. Thank you.
I love that. We can make people accept us if we accept ourselves for who we are.
One of the examples for me of how far we have to go is at the federal level, state and local level, we have federal policy that sets up aging and disability resource centers that are growing and investment of dollars are. And I'm wondering why we would conflate those two things together.
It's like in the bookstore, you see aging and dying as because we live in an ageist culture that conflates the two in terms of services. They're services for, if aging is presented as a disease to be cured, you can sell people cures for it, right? There's enormous money to be made in the aging population. And if aging is presented as a problem to be fixed, cosmetically, obviously, then we can sell people all kinds of remedies to fix it. Aging does, physical decline inevitably accompanies aging, but people age at different rates, and we need to push back strongly against the equation of aging with illness, as you are obviously doing. So ask that question of the people who made it that name. Each of us has to call out ageism, whether it's some small thing in our daily life or some issue we have with federal policy, because we need a social movement. It's going to take a social movement to change the way people think and to change the way society is structured. And but I think, I see plenty of evidence that it's already underway, and let's make it happen.
So we have time for 2 more questions. We have one over here with Gary, and then the last one with Larry here.
So the question that I have, Ashton, is I understand that you are actually going to be live in the Portland area in sometime in the reasonably near future. Is that true?
In October. I believe it is, yes, October 29th. And hopefully for a few days on either side of it. I don't have my plans firmed up yet, but if you go to thischairrocks.com, on the homepage is a place where you can sign up for my newsletter, or you can just look. There's also an appearances page, although if you do sign up for my newsletter, I will never give it away, and I will not send you spam, and I will keep you apprised of my appearances that way. I'd love to see you all there.
I would just like to express, I guess, my concern about all of these terms, youngers, olders. I feel it's putting people in boxes. And
I feel like it's putting people on a spectrum. I mean, because everyone is younger than someone else and older than someone else. So you can be anywhere on that spectrum that you want to be. I mean, I'm certainly past the midpoint of life. So if I had to choose, I would identify as an older, and also because I don't want to seem to be denying my age. But if I go give a talk at a senior center, I'm often one of the younger people in the room. So I like it because it allows us to see our, I guess I think that it's less of a box than senior or elderly or kid. But if you don't like those terms, use whatever terms work for you.
So to be continued, because these are great questions. Ashton, thank you again. This has been delightful.
My pleasure.
We'll see you in October.
Great to meet you, Jenny.
I like to hold the microphone because I like to walk, maybe a little dance. If you need to stand up a minute and stretch, please do, because I know you've been sitting there a while. I know I don't like to sit too long. While you do so, I'll tell you just a little bit about myself. My name is Mike Faber, and as Jan alluded to earlier, I'm the newest full-time faculty member here at PCC in Gerontology. I started in the fall term, and I am so happy to be here. I've been working in the field for, gosh, nearly 30 years now, all of it in Michigan prior to this year. I've been teaching for about 20 years in the field of gerontology. I love this field, and I love the people, and part of what Roger said earlier really resonated with me, and that is that bit about passion. We seem to attract people to this field who have a passion. And that's what I believe is the most important thing in terms of our lives and in terms of our overall happiness and well-being, is finding your passion. And we're hoping that all of you have a place in that passion today to really work toward a solution toward this issue of ageism that we've been talking about. Augie, that's the Association for Gerontology and Higher Education Fellow. So I'm a fellow with our national association, as Jan is as well. And they like us to promote that, so I'm letting you know. Okay. Today, what do I want to accomplish? I want to first talk a little bit about institutional practices that do exist, where there is such a thing as ageism and a lot of stereotypes. We've learned that already today, so I want to talk a little bit more about how they exist. But more importantly, I want to talk about how do we develop a paradigm shift. We talked a lot about ageism and stereotypes, but we haven't talked quite as much about how can we change this paradigm. What are we going to do? So my role is to kind of get our brains thinking about what our role is as individuals in being change agents. I also am going to recognize that there is a multicultural perspective to this, and we'll talk about that in today's presentation. So real quickly, I'm going to go through these because they should be pretty basic to you. But what is a stereotype? A stereotype is an often unfair and untrue belief that many people have about all people or things with a particular characteristic. This is directly from the dictionary. So if we're going to apply this to aging stereotypes, we can apply it to other things as well. So stereotypes, we have a number of stereotypes in our culture. One is racism. The other ism that is very common is the sexism that we see. And today we're going to focus more on ageism. Now, this does not mean these are all the isms, but these are some of the more common ones that we have talked about. And I think Ashton made a great point, and that is that all the isms, we're starting to recognize them. We're starting to actually see that it's not correct to adhere to those isms of racism or sexism, but ageism seems to be one bastion that's still allowed. For some reason in our culture, we're still allowed to use aging-related humor and stereotypes. So we need to look at that a little closer. So what are some common examples of aging stereotypes? Just shout them out. You all know them. Sorry? You're too old to do that. Slow. You're slow. Feeble. You're feeble. Forgetful. You're forgetful. Afraid of technology. You're afraid of technology. You can't wear spandex. You can't wear spandex. You don't know how to use emoticons. I've only learned about them recently. And my kids tell me, Dad, they're out. We don't use those anymore. Oh, I'm a little behind on that. Okay, what else? You're losing it. The whole issues with memory, issues about driving. We could talk about it all day. The reality is, though, where do these aging stereotypes come from? Have you ever really thought about where they come from?
We live in a very youth-oriented society, and if you're not young, then you're not okay.
So we live in a very youth-oriented society where if you're not young, you're not okay. Anything else?
We're a society of doers who pack our day with this and this and this and this. And if you can't keep up, then there's something wrong.
So we're a society? society of doers that are always doing, doing, doing. If you can't keep up, there's something wrong with you. Yes?
I'm guilty of it myself. I mean, I make comments about myself making excuses for what I can't do and what I can't do. And then it's transferred on to, my kids, and then from them to my grandkids. So I'm my own worst enemy, and I'm realizing this.
Sure.
Like, okay, shut your mouth. Don't say anything anymore. Make it all conscious.
Sure.
I mean, I think it's a mindset.
It is. That's why we call it a mindset intervention, right? You brought in a really good point, Cheryl, and it leads in really well to the rest of my presentation, is that we all, in many ways, are guilty of internalized and unintentional biases that we hold, including ageist stereotypes and biases. And part of what we have to look at is, where do they come from? So again, Ashton did a good job of defining ageism for us today, but it's basically prejudice or discrimination against a particular age group. Now, it doesn't have to be just older people, okay? Sometimes teenagers are the target of ageism, and younger people, and sometimes people at midlife. But the reality is, it is predominantly, we see ageist attitudes and beliefs targeted toward older persons. So ageism, some basic components of ageism, they're overgeneralizations based on outward characteristics. Because of those outward characteristics, people become victims of discrimination. This can be in education, this can be in healthcare, this can be in employment, it can be in a variety of areas. And they're judged on a number, which is their age, the chronological age, rather than on their set of abilities. And Ashton alluded to this, the idea that we really shouldn't use chronological age as a way to determine someone's abilities or who they are. We should look at each individual as an individual. And frankly, a better way to judge someone's abilities is based on functional age. Because we can have many young people, maybe in their 30s and 40s, who are functionally very limited for one reason or another, and people well in their 80s, 90s, and beyond who are functionally very capable. I just want to mention briefly that we see one area where I think people are the hardest hit, and that is for older minority females. Why? Because they're hit by all three isms, okay? All three isms, by racism, by sexism, and by ageism. And we call that triple jeopardy, triple jeopardy. For those same individuals, especially those who come from minority communities, we also see that they experience lifelong patterns of discrimination in access to education, to employment, to healthcare, in other arenas. And again, it's accentuated later in life, especially if they have struggles to survive based on economics. And the good news, though, that I believe is happening is that we're going to see this trend reverse, or hopefully reverse. And that is, we're seeing greater levels of ethnic and racial diversity on their way. And we will see this for the rest of all of our lives in this room. So, we talked about what is ageism, but now, what causes ageism? I want to dig a little deeper, okay? I believe the primary causes relate to that whole idea of perpetuation of myths and stereotypes. And this could relate also to the otherisms. But in ageism, I think it's the perpetuation of the aging myths and stereotypes in three areas. By society, because as Ashton mentioned, we're not born ageist. We're not born with any of these isms. These isms are learned behavior. And they're usually learned from pretty young ages. The second area that we have to look at is older persons themselves. There are those older persons who actually take on these aging stereotypes, make them their own, and because of it, they become self-fulfilling prophecies. And I'm going to give you examples of all of these in a minute. And the third is well-meaning educators and professionals, like many of us. Myself included, I'm going to give you examples today as well. So let's talk about it being a learned behavior. I've been concerned with this issue of ageism for the last decade and spending quite a bit of time thinking about it, reading about it, talking about it publicly, because I'm very concerned about what's happening in our society and how older adults see themselves, how other people see older adults, and how older adults are treated in our culture. So, to my great surprise, a number of years ago, my wife told me this story of something that happened with her and my middle daughter, who was then in high school. They were walking out of church, my wife and my daughter, and not any more than 2 feet behind them was an older woman. They had just passed her. And my daughter, in her not so quiet high school teenage voice, said, "Mom, I just love old people. They're so cute." And you know what she's saying? That's not so bad, but it was the way she said it and where. My wife's like, "Shh, shh, shh." And she turns to my wife, and again, this woman is right behind them, and she says, "Don't worry, Mom. They can't hear anyhow." Now, let me tell you, I'm glad I wasn't there. But, two, it made me really think about this, and this might be part of what led me down this path of really concern around ageism. Where did this come from? In my own home, where did this come from? I know I wasn't doing this in the home, so where was it coming from? I thought about what were the relationships that my daughter had with older adults. The primary relationship at that time was with my mother-in-law, because my mother-in-law lived with us for the last 8 years of her life, at which time she had Parkinson's disease, in the later stages dementia, and she was very hard of hearing. And I thought, well, she's picking this up from the fact that Mom is hard of hearing. But at the same time, we have relationships with our neighbors, with friends of the family, with other relatives, none of whom have any significant hearing loss. So where is this coming from? And I really had to think, and I really believe it comes from a variety of places, but I think it comes in large part from what they hear out and about around other people and what they hear from the media. Would you agree the media's message is not very good on proper relationship to aging and can be very ageist? So I was very concerned about this. When we talk about older persons themselves, I want to use the same example of my mother-in-law. I loved my mother-in-law. But you know, every time I'd sit down and try to talk to her about something that could improve her life, I would say, "Mom, I have this program I'm running at the college." I was at Grand Rapids Community College at the time in Michigan, running an older learner program. And we had encore learners well into their 90s. People with much more complicated health issues than my mother-in-law at the time. And I'd encourage her, "Come on, Mom, don't just sit here in the house all day. Come out with me, come to the program, meet some of these great people, get involved." Her answer when I asked her to participate in anything like this, or to even encourage her to do the physical therapy that her doctor said she should do, was always the same thing. And it was, "I'm too old for that. I'm too old for that." She truly had bought into that premise that at a certain age, you're too old for everything. And she literally shut herself in a room and refused to live her life. And what happens when that happens? Again, a downward spiral of health. And I felt like a prophet, you know, who could be successful anywhere but in his own land, because I could talk to large groups of people about this, but I couldn't convince Mom to change her behavior or to change her mindset. And that was a very difficult life lesson for me. But I've seen this time and again with many older people who have chosen to buy into those stereotypes. The last area, well-meaning educators and professionals. We train a lot of individuals in this gerontology program to go out and work with older adults. Now, I would say the majority of our students end up in long-term care settings. And many times they're working with older adults who deal with Alzheimer's disease, who are living with Alzheimer's disease or other forms of dementia, or who are experiencing some type of health decline. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people, when we work in that environment day in, day out, it tends to color our lenses so that we tend to see and generalize all older persons like that individual who's experiencing loss and decline. Unfortunately, that's very unfortunate, because the reality is the majority of older adults are healthy, active, and productive. Most of the time, we only see this decline in the latest stages of one's life, and not always then as well. But it will color our vision. Those of us who are educators in this field, look through any gerontology textbook. The majority of the content's going to deal with loss and decline. Okay? It's dealing with those issues that we need to deal with because they're very important, but they're not the most important factor about growing older, because there are so many benefits about growing older. And Roger named a few in terms of our mind and its capacity, those two hemispheres working together. I'm just going on 52, so I'm able to take advantage of that now. So that's good. That's good for me. So what I can tell you, though, is that we as educators need to do a better job of keeping a positive mindset and trying not to buy into the generalizations of aging and teach it in that way. Let me use an example from my own life as well. Just last week, and this is true confessions, I was working out. I work out mornings in the gym here at the college. I was working out, and I was maybe overdoing it a little bit with the weightlifting. And one of my colleagues from another department came up to me, and you know what I said? I said, "I'm too old for this." And I thought immediately, why did I say that? You know, oh my goodness. I probably was feeling it at the time, but the truth is, why did I say that? A more appropriate thing for me to say would have been, I'm too out of shape for this, and I need to get in shape. It's my fault. So we have to change our mindset, and that goes for all of us. So this, I think the possible solutions that I believe that we can apply to changing ageism in our culture is through a paradigm shift that involves education of society. We have to start when kids are young. We really need to be doing things in the schools. Unfortunately, it's not happening there. Even in colleges and universities, even in medical schools, oftentimes gerontology is not a component that's included. And the reality is it should be. So where does this education have to occur? It has to occur in the home, with the parents, with the family members. We need to be responsible for this education in our own homes. We need to make a difference one life at a time, okay, in terms of what we say, how we say it, and how we help to educate people around these important issues. Aging individuals are going to be a part of this paradigm shift. I really believe the baby boomers are going to bring a lot to the table. Baby boomers have never been okay with the status quo. They've always been change agents, so why are they going to stop now? They're not. Hey, baby boomers, who else other than me? All right. Us baby boomers, we're going to make a difference in the world, and this is one thing we can really do, is change this mindset. And we're starting to see it in our culture. We're starting to see it in the media. Things are improving and starting to turn around, and I think, in large part, it's the power of this large group of baby boomers. And again, we can never underestimate the impact of those of us professionals who work in this field. If those of us who work in this field, who study gerontology, who are doing this day to day, don't make a change, no one will. If we don't do it, it's not going to happen. So we have a great responsibility, I think, as change agents. So what I want you to do, I'm going to give you some questions for reflection. Do you view aging like this, as strong, healthy, vital? I'm trying to get there because I'm a long ways. I'm working at it. Or do you view it like this? Remember the 20 extra years you agreed to your life through, you added to your life through clean, healthy living? Well, these are them. Unfortunately, I think far too many people, this is their view of aging, when it really should be this. So, some questions for self-reflection. I'm going to put these up rather quickly, but I'm going to put them all on the screen in a minute. And I really want you to take a couple of minutes to reflect on them, jot some notes to yourself, and maybe if we have time, even share with another person real quickly, because I believe if we're going to make a difference, we have to make a commitment right here, right now, today, to change. And for that to happen, we got to start here by putting it on paper and making a commitment to another person. Okay, so the first one is, do I hold any stereotypical views of aging in older persons? If you think you don't, think twice. Just like me in that comment in the gym. Or how do you feel the last time you were on the highway and someone was slow in front of you? Was your first thought that this is an older driver? And did you say something out loud? And were there young, impressionable minds in the car? If there was, you helped to perpetuate the myth of aging rather than to dispel it. In your words and actions of your daily life, do I dispel or perpetuate aging myths and stereotypes? How do I react and respond to those using aging stereotypes and ageist behavior? Okay? Think about aging humor. How do you respond to it? You just let it go on? Do you laugh at it? Or do you actually confront someone in a gentle way and use it as an opportunity, as a teaching moment? As a teaching moment. And the last one is, what can I do in my personal and professional life to create positive societal change in this area? And here they all are for you to take a quick look at. I really do want you, before you to leave today, to address these issues. And hopefully at the break, you'll have a chance to talk to one of your fellow participants here today and hold each other accountable towards change. Okay, I think I'm running over, so Jenny's coming up.
I actually don't like the role of timekeeper very much because I don't like to interrupt all this great content, but I have to keep us on track. We have one more presentation before we're going to take a break, and then we're going to come back together for open discussion. So I wanted to invite Steve Higgs to come up. Can you hear me okay? All right. So let me tell you just a bit about Steve. I'm really glad he's here. He's the executive director of SAGE, Senior Advocates for Generational Equity, and he is proud to serve the growing alliance of seniors who are powerful advocates for the rights of future generations. So we're going to look more closely at intergenerational collaboration and activism because we're all in this together. In collaboration with the board of directors of SAGE, Steve leads the efforts to raise awareness, foster dialogue, and engage citizens in creating opportunities for future generations to thrive. So that legacy piece, we haven't really talked very much about that yet. He is responsible for implementing SAGE's strategic initiatives, building the SAGE Alliance of Supporters, and managing the organization's communications and financial operations. And I'm going to turn it over to you so you have plenty of time. And the microphone is slipping, so.
I'm going to try this. Thank you so much, Denny. Can you hear me? Is it all right? I really appreciate it. And I'm going to try something out here. Go out into the Geronaut area, just the area unknown. Yeah, the Gerosphere. This is great. I am so lucky to be here today and honored to have been invited to join this wonderful group. I missed your presentation, Roger. I had to run out for something, but I heard him. He worked with me a little while ago, and this is my first time on campus at PCC, and it's just great. It's a beautiful setting, and so nice to meet you at last, Jan. So again, my name is Steve Higgs. I'm with an organization called SAGE. It's actually an acronym. It stands for Senior Advocates for Generational Equity. So yes, we use the word senior in our name, and we're not afraid of it. I like it. But basically what generational equity means is this principle that each generation will improve the quality of life for the next. It's a goal that I think millions and billions of people actually share all around the world. And our little piece of that is to work to raise awareness about the types of challenges that younger and future generations face, and to work to engage older adults as leaders and advocates to take on those challenges. And so that's just one piece of a larger equation of a lot of organizations in this community that are working to help older adults with mobility, with housing, with care, with just sort of jobs and career development, all sorts of pieces our role is to also help to connect to service and advocacy roles in the community. And in a nutshell, we are really guided by this proverb: a society grows great when its elders plant trees whose shade they know they shall never sit in. This is above my desk at work. I think about it every day, and I think about all the amazing ways that older adults strengthen our communities. Just to give you an example, part of our work is to connect people to mentoring roles. So in the schools, we also advocate and help people connect to sort of roles like river conservation and cleaning air and cleaning water. We also encourage people to become vocal advocates in government, either go down to Salem or Washington, D.C., wherever it is, wherever you can sort of imagine planting a tree of opportunity for the next generation, or even the community that you already love. That's what we encourage people to do. And so that's the core guiding principle of the work. One thing that I'm really privileged to do is to work with a lot of other nonprofit organizations in this community. And what I wanted to emphasize today, just sort of keeping with the theme of ageism and battling ageism, is hopefully you can tell, the underlying premise of our work is that older adults have enormous capacity, they have enormous skills, and really the success of our entire social movements is in their hands. And so our whole mission is sort of built around that premise that we need to find ways to help keep and inspire and support people to stay involved because it's so important. And so one of the roles that we play is we raise awareness about service and advocacy opportunities within a lot of different organizations in the community. And what I've found through working with these organizations and others is that older adults are the backbone within those organizations. They're on the boards, they're volunteers, they're providing guidance. Wherever it happens to be, everything is sort of ticking and working because of the strength and energy they bring to the work. And that's something that I don't know if celebrated enough, but there are statistics on this that older adults are the top volunteers in the country, they're the top philanthropists in the country, they're the top political leaders in the country, they're certainly the top entrepreneurs in the country. There's a lot of energy within the independent sector or the social sector that is just so essential, and it's something that if there's ever a view that older adults can't power these social movements, that's what we're trying to beat back and really encourage, and to the extent that people in the room can help us to change that narrative, that would be wonderful. So that's one thing that I wanted to elevate, is how important a number of older adults are to these social movements in the community. Second, another part of what we do, in addition to sort of raising awareness about these service roles, is we do leadership development. And oftentimes that means sort of in a one-on-one setting, we'll sit down and help people talk about their personal legacy, what they want to share and learn through service. And we do that over coffee, or sometimes we'll do a workshop. We also run a 9-month program called the Legacy Fellowship, where we train people to carry out community benefit projects of their own design. And the core thing that I've learned from working with a number of older adults in that program is the power of leadership and innovation. I'll give you an example. There is a lot of life experience that comes into when you want to lead your own project. And you need to have sort of grit, you need to have a sort of tenacity, you need to have sort of a vision and be able to hold it over a long period of time. And I've been so inspired to see people who are at a, in their 50s or 60s and their 70s to just sort of exhibit that amazing tenacity to push through and lead a project of their own design. It's really inspirational. An example is a good friend of mine, Roberta Schwartz. And there's millions of examples like this all across the country. She had a vision of wanting to kind of build a local park for her city. And so 15 years ago, sort of set out and sort of started fundraising, one fundraiser at a time. She's probably done 50 or 60 fundraisers in her community. This is not her job, it's just a passion. But she held this idea that I want to kind of lead this. And in the process, she's been able to engage all sorts of people in the community, children, church groups, businesses, all around, just sort of through this grit. And at the same time, she's been successful. She's been raising millions of dollars. And it's just one example of how people sort of stepping up can really lead the charge and make a difference in the world. And that's really, as far as what I wanted to share, just to kind of keep time a little bit here, is how important it is to help in this community, in the work you do, changing that narrative that if I'm aging and I used to be connected to social movements and I had this burning passion within me, this is something I hear a lot. That, that's the type of work that we're talking about, being active in the schools, being active in policy, being active in various social movements in the community as something that you used to do, and as something that we should leave to somebody else. That's the narrative that we're working to change, and it's something that I feel like it kind of goes to your point about internal, what's the term, ageism? Yeah, internalized ageism, where people sort of look at the problems in the world as if somebody else should take them on, forgetting how strong and how capable they are of actually taking them on themselves. And that's, I think, it's a narrative that we would like to help change, and I think what you all are doing is part of that, and I really appreciate it. Okay?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Thank you. So what's on your minds? What burning questions do you have? Or new ideas? I see my friend Jeanette here.
First of all, I think this has been great. I'm just so impressed that you put together this kind of presentation, group of presentations. One of the things, I will be giving a presentation I will be giving a presentation in about a week to the Leading Age Oregon Conference called In Other Words, Transforming the Language of Ageism. And there are different words, different ways we can look at words, individual words, and then the kinds of phrases we use and the kinds of examples we use. And I'm hoping that this could be the start of us all wrestling with these ideas. I mean, I love the fact that we're talking about, what about the word elders or the word seniors? What does this all mean? So I'm just so excited that this is the start of having this kind of a dialogue.
Anyone on this side?
No, we got to do a mic because we're recording.
I need some help here then. The topic of gerontology, when I'm asked, what are you going to school for? I say, I'm taking gerontology. For some people, they understand what that means. For some, they don't. So I say this. I say, well, it's a study on aging, people, of elderly people. And since I am going that direction, I thought that it would be a good idea to take this class and learn about what to expect as I get older. Now, that to me that's ageism, what I'm saying. I mean, so I don't know, I'm gonna need a tract or something, to get me to say, and that's why I'm asking, what do you say when you bring up the subject gerontology to people?
Hey, here's my chance. It's my chance. Well, that's a great question. And I think people working in the field of gerontology struggle with how to answer it. And there's probably so it's not just you, my darling, it's not. There's lots of different answers, probably depending on who the audience is. I do think that we've been limited for a long time in thinking that gerontology is the study of just later life and just adult aging, and that increasingly we really understand that we need to emphasize aging as a journey that unfolds across the entire life course, that there is a phenomenon or there is an experience that is very unique to being an old person and to reaching the farthest reaches of the life course. And we want to really look at that, and that's our primary focus in gerontology, but it's not disconnected from the entire journey across the life course, which is deeply contextualized, right? It's not just about the body, it's also about culture and mind and spirit relationships. So, yeah, human development, exactly. Yeah, it's about human development from the beginning until whatever happens next. Yeah, I mean, that's just what I think. Oh, look at all the hands. Okay, Gary.
Okay, so, whoa, hello. So I was having trouble hearing other people, so I thought I'd swallow this one. So a couple of things came up. When this younger was speaking, I say that because you are younger than me. One of the things, the quickest one was about the need to change perceptions and attitudes and stereotypes. I think the most subtle and yet pervasive form of elder abuse is withholding medical care because of your age. Okay, I encountered this with my mother, for an example, and my mother-in-law both, who were having under advice by their doctor to not undergo some medical treatment or even surgery because of their age. You're just, you're a little old for this, we're not sure you're going to recover, et cetera. So I really think that that's a stereotype that definitely needs to change. But you were also talking about where they come from, and I think part of our challenge is we don't have enough experience with what it is to age, because we've only had, 50, 60, 70 years of this kind of extended life. We don't know what that looks like. I mean, aberrations 10, 15 years ago are now the norm in terms of aging and what it looks like. So we're constantly reinventing that, not necessarily, I don't think, because there's this pervasive stereotype about what old people are, but because we keep pushing the bar and we keep changing what old looks like. And it's based on the fact that we're living longer and we're living differently. So I would just say, let's give ourselves a little bit of a break, too, because, some of these stereotypes serve a purpose.
My point is this working? Really quickly, I'm just curious where we can all teach by example and do some self-reflection, figure out how we can do it better, and call people out, call ourselves out if we hear things, or stumble over words and ask somebody, did I say that right? Or what do you prefer? But I'm curious if there are, if we're seeing it in the business world. Are companies looking for presentations so that their employees will be better about it? Because we can be great in our circles, we can be great with our families, but when we go out shopping and we get hit with ageist comments, and not necessarily mean, they mean well, but how do we educate the workforce that's dealing with seniors every day? So I'm just curious if any of you people in the world of gerontology are seeing a movement there.
I could tell you what Elders in Action's been working on. Yeah, for a long time. We've been focusing on aging awareness and the idea of age friendliness in collaboration with the Institute on Aging at Portland State and many other organizations, but really trying to put flesh on this idea of creating age-friendly communities, an age-friendly world, and what does that mean? Not just the physical environment, which is so important, but also the attitudinal, the consciousness that we bring into our interactions with people. And I think that there's a long way to go. I agree with you that there's kinds of training. There's a lot in workplaces now about the multi-generational workplace. I don't know the extent to which that's actually about explicitly looking at racism. So that's a great research question, actually. That's a great question.
Yeah, I wanted to thank you all for this great presentation, but I also wanted, when we were talking about like negative and positive behavior and everything and being advocates, I think a huge percentage of the world is negative, more so, and if you back that up, it's more probably related to prescription medication that a lot of older people are on. And I know I was like that. I've definitely been on prescription medication and seriously depressed and had that attitude that I just didn't give a shit about life. And I didn't care that I was getting older and that I was going to die. And I think that's a lot of how older people think, because so many of them are on prescription medication. So it's like, how do you get through to those people when they're so, their negativity is based on the medication that they're taking? You know what I mean? It's like, so you really can't get to them to have them change that mindset. And I just think that, that's a huge part of it, and how do you reach those people?
Well, you know, tonight has really been an eye-opener for me because I never thought I would have been discriminated against for being old. And I realize I have been. And I also realize that many of us probably have been, but we don't know that it's happened to us until we get that little uncomfortable feeling after somebody said something to us. And so I would like to suggest, Mike, that we possibly try to put something like this into effect. I was listening to the radio the other day, and in a couple of high schools on the East Coast, they were doing what was called a mini demonstration against discrimination. And I know I'm not going to be socially appropriate at this moment, but just bear with me as we get this idea out. And they allowed the kids in these high schools to make signs for one day and put up those signs that say, hey, I'm in this minority or I'm this type of person, and this is a mini discrimination that I have to face every day. And this is horrible for me to say, but this is what I heard in the radio. And I thought, gee, I never thought that I was discriminating when I did that. But one of the kids had made the sign, I am tired of being asked whether I'm Japanese, Chinese, or Asian, because people always say, you all look alike. And you know, that's like a common thing that unfortunately a lot of people say. And they named several other things. And then it just occurred to me as we're listening to all this, I'm sure I've been discriminated for my age, and I only have this uncomfortable feeling. So wouldn't it be a wonderful project for us to have a mini discrimination, put up a sign and have that out for the whole day and say, hey, you are discriminating against me when you say this to me. And the example that happened to me the other day in the store was I was getting some stuff at Joann Fabrics, and I had my new smartphone, which I think is not so smart because I don't know how to use it that well. And she said, well, you can get your coupons off of your smartphone. And I said, okay, how? And I was thinking she was going to tell me. She grabbed that phone, and she must have done 100 different things to it. I don't know if I'm on the FBI list now or not. So I would encourage us. I feel so strong tonight that we really have to bring up the surface of what all these little bits of discrimination that we are accepting and allowing, and that we really have to make, like they said, the big pushback, And let's have maybe a project where we're going to do, this is discrimination and you don't know it by holding up a sign or wearing that sign all day. And we start at the school here or do it. I mean, the fact that they did it at several high schools on the East Coast has lowered their discrimination, has stopped the micro statements that people say, and they have now improved their ability to have the kids get along. And I know partly that because my sister was in charge of it. So,
Thank you.
So there we go.
Go ahead. A few years ago, I heard Jenny speak at the Oregon Gerontological Society Association, and what really struck me was the importance of working from the micro level. And I've heard that a lot tonight. Passion, we're boomers. We've got passion regardless of our age. And this legacy fellowship, what one person can do. Last night I watched the movie 42. That was Jackie Robinson. What was his name? Branch Rickey. He changed the course of this country by bringing Jackie Robinson, one person. So it seems to me, regardless of our age, we work at the micro level. Macro only changes with the influence, the push of the micro. And I've heard that time and time again tonight. So when we say, well, what can we do individually or whatever, but working from the micro, whatever the passion is, and change happens, I think, that way.
One of the things that we can do is to become the change that we want to see and operate with brio, vigor, and share with all those that we know all the things that we're doing to live a full and exciting life. And I'll commend to everybody a beautiful video on YouTube that features Joan and Eric Erickson in their late 80s. It's worth watching. It's a beautiful example of two people walking into the senior years, feeling good about their lives, and talking about what they have done to make the most of their older years. It's beautiful. Joan and Eric Erickson on YouTube. Just put it on YouTube and it'll come up. It's worth watching.
I wanted to address what you said about prescription medicine, what Gary said about the medical community. One of the things that's desperately needed is more geriatricians in this country, people who specialize in treating older adults. I think the medical community needs to be educated. Very few medical schools actually have mandatory training in geriatrics. They have plenty of training in pediatrics and not in geriatrics. Just as children's bodies, children are not little adults, children's bodies, older adult bodies are different as well. So I think that's one of the things. A lot of prescription medications have to, doctors don't pick up on the fact that a lot of older adults are over-medicated, and geriatricians can usually pick up on that and solve that.
Maybe the one last.
Okay. I wish I had a Fitbit on so that I know how many steps I've taken.
I just wanted to, again, layer on the whole, the doctors and the way their sense of ageism towards older people. And it's not just what kind of medicine they're prescribed or not, but that attitude. And I've had a number of people say to me with outrage, he said to me, we aren't going to do anything about this. And she said, well, why? You know, I'm feeling this. He says, you've had a good life, you know, just let go of this idea. And come back, and I'm told this in outrage, but there's a lot of that feeling, even at kind of in my age. I'm starting to notice that, not, and maybe it's my health plan, but saying, no, you know, we don't do this test. Too bad you have this lump. But you know, it's just, I think that's really, it's the attitude, not just the medical training, but beyond the training is the attitude. I wanted to also, please, go back to something, what I've heard is my favorite term tonight was when Ashton was speaking, and I just loved it when she used value neutral as a way of speaking about people, and I thought that's a great phrase or term in looking at all people, all ages, all abilities, and just having value neutral ways of approaching people and our attitudes toward them.
Nice. Last one.
So my mind is just like buzzing all over the place. But a couple things being from the baby boomer, hardcore, you know, feminism time. I remember being like really pissed off just because I got married. It meant that everybody sort of assumed that I had a coupled language and that my life was coupled. And so I tended to use my language like myself, you know, it's like I did this or I did that. And I started that when I was living in California after I got married. And then when I was up here, that was who I was. And I had people, when I turned up pregnant, well, when did you get married? Well, a long time ago. But it's like my language. And so I'm thinking about, you know, we've talked about terms and language and how we think about ourselves, that language is extremely powerful. And how we think of ourselves, how we convey our interactions and our use of language and communicating to other people is one way, thinking about words, terminology, things that we've discussed today that we can take and think about what are we saying and how do we say it when we're communicating with other people. And then the overgeneralization of outward characteristics, we use in plus and minus outward characteristics when we're talking about, you know, so-and-so who looked like blah, 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 if we're trying to describe to somebody. But it also, we tend to use a lot of times those a little more judgmental, the prejudicial kinds of characteristics, you know, the fat person or, you know, the skinny person or the black person or, you know, we use terms when we're describing, and how can we describe without some of those outward characteristics that tend to reinforce some of that sort of isms that we're trying to, in a sense, bust a little bit.
Good question.
Thank you. Yeah. So, I think we're coming close to the end, but as I want to get a little discussion going while we have a final activity, an interactive activity we want you all to get involved in. Trace's calling attention to the fact that the books, Ashton's book, This Chair Rocks, is on sale here for $20. And we want you to know that it is a donation, a tax-deductible donation to the PCC program, the Gerontology Program Fund for Excellence, which goes towards supporting these kinds of events. And speaking of these kinds of events, we see this tonight as a kickoff, and I think a very productive and very motivating discussion and interaction that we've had here today for what we would like to see to continue for a year-long and maybe beyond, but at least for the next year, campaign to end ageism. And we are fortunate enough to have received from the PCC District Student Council a grant that will be the seed money to help us to actually carry this on. To give you a couple of ideas of what we are proposing, one is to train a group of student leaders, not just the Geronauts, because we know that they're already a part of it, but also the broader student leadership here at PCC on addressing how to address and to intervene in instances of ageism that they see in their lives. We want to do some public events, and some of you have had some good ideas about, like asking people, or what they want to be called, or the many demonstrations, of calling attention to what's happening to people in terms of age, and getting this kind of a public, kind of changing things up and getting a public discussion going. And for the spring, we work in terms, so that's fall, winter, and now moving to the spring. We want to take those student leaders to be a part of the training for the faculty, the staff, and administration at PCC. So, but what we realize that we need, of course, is also the connection with the community partners that are here, because we are a community college, and that means, we need that kind of connection. So we would like your input, and you can start with just some ideas today, but we will also be contacting you and following up on to get more ideas into what we might all do together. And does anybody have anything along these lines you'd like to just share briefly? Yes.
I'm not sure this really fits what you're asking, but taking off on Connie's idea about ageism to include, I love that idea, by the way, but to include the youngers in that too, how they experience ageism, so really to take that out, and that would bring more student leaders in if we do make that a broad spectrum thing.
Yeah, absolutely, great idea. Yep.
I'm just thinking about, can you hear me? That one of the reasons where younger people feel that young or ageism, I think, is in economic areas, and that it's harder to get a job because you're young and you haven't had the experience. And so what can we hire you for? And I'm thinking about ageism in general, at least to me on the spectrum, how it relates to how it affects us economically. People get laid off work, they can't get work, you're too young, you can't get a job. It's known that older single women are the lowest level of the economic spectrum in the United States. That's where ageism really bothers me, just single women in general. And then when they get older, they just keep getting lower on that level. And so I think in ways of gathering younger people into it, as far as your idea, or liking that, is saying, how can we interest them, is saying, how can it make a difference for you in terms of where it bothers you most? How does it bother them? And I would always think they can't always get a job, or they're worried about not having the privileges that they want. It's in some ways relevancy. I think that when you get older, you have this level of becoming irrelevant in our society, but at some point when you're younger, you're also irrelevant too until you get older and acquire some of the benefits of it.
Right, yeah. So we all need to be empowered to be a part of the solution. Yeah. Pam.
Okay, yeah, no, I forgot my question. It's just a senior moment. Okay, so I think that, oh, gosh, I'm in the right place. Okay, I'm learning. I'll work on that one. That was one of my favorite lines, too. Golly. But, you know, what I was wondering was, I forgot it again. Oh, I got it. Was that it should be mandatory that older people get paid more. It really should be. I mean, they should pass that in Congress or something, because we are smarter all the way around. I mean, it really should be a mandatory thing that we get paid more than a younger person because of cost of living anyway. So I just thought.
You were talking about ideas for what these student leaders could do, and one of the things that came to mind for me was this really versatile tool that I've used before that's known as play. Specifically, improv play with restorative justice techniques. There's a lot of people who do that type of facilitation in town, and it's really fun, especially for like actually getting people involved and creating a safe space where they can kind of act out scenarios where perhaps somebody says something a bit ageist, and we get to play together of like how to reframe that, how to change it.
Like the illumination project that we have at PCC.
Probably, yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, definitely. That's, yeah.
Or the what?
Or a Geropunk.
Right on.
Idea. Right. And, okay, okay, go ahead.
So there's this question and one last question. Right. And then you have something to do.
And actually, not necessarily a question, a suggestion, first of all, while we still have an intergenerational audience too, is that we have these wonderful flyers here that have End Ageism on them. Wouldn't it be cool if we had a group picture of everybody in the room holding up their End Ageism sticker and then post it on Facebook? Elders in Action could do that. I bet my Office of Citizen Involvement at the county could do that as well. So those that want to stay, I would suggest stay. Let's get a group picture and I'll hold it up. Oh, great, okay. And the other thing is there's a new word instead of senior moment, okay? A word I've discovered in the Urban Dictionary called destinesia. It's destination amnesia. It's forgetting where you were going or why you were going there by the time you get there. Works for your train of thought. You know, I forgot my point. What was it? Okay. And it's intergenerational, guaranteed.
So in thinking about ways to, do some other activities, I was reading, actually it was in the Wall Street Journal, it was two psychologists who have studied sociology, and they were sort of criticizing some of the money that's being given to Harvard and Yale for their new, programs to end discrimination and how they're doing it, because they're actually going still at what are the differences. And what Ashton was saying today in, where are we common? And that's what this article was saying by these two other psychologists and sociologists, is that where are we common? Because that's when we lose that difference in how we look, or those surface things that go into the isms. And so looking at things to bring that jointness of whoever's in the groups in whatever ways they are to help dissolve some of those other pieces.
Great. All right, so Mike, do we have...
We have a closing activity. So if my helpers can pass out the yardsticks, you're all going to get a yardstick today. I don't want you to do anything with this until I describe it to you. And it might be very nice because we have room that you spread out. Those of you who are sitting closely, spread out. And you're going to need to stand to do this. Put stuff down and spread out a bit. Please don't hit each other with these. Just hold them nice and still. Everybody has one now? All right. Make sure you have some distance between you and the person next to you. Okay, here's what I'm going to have you do. All right? All I want you to do right now is hold out the hand that's not holding the yardstick. Okay? Look at your pointer finger. Now look at the tip of your pointer finger and concentrate all of your energy, your thought, and all of your mental capacity on just the tip of your finger. Okay? That's all you're going to look at right now. Now take the ruler in the other hand and only looking at the tip of your finger, try to balance your yardstick on that tip of your finger. Only, don't take your eyes off the tip of your finger. Only on the tip of your finger. Now try, but don't look anywhere but the tip of your finger. Everyone try. Some people haven't let go yet. Oh, someone's being creative. But you need to put it on the end. On the end. Lengthwise. Lengthwise, okay. All right. Only on the tip of your finger. Okay, now everybody who's holding on, let go. All right, now I want you to just admit that was pretty difficult, right? Okay, now put the ruler back into your non-dominant hand. I'm going to make it easier for you. No. All right, this time I don't want you to look at the tip of your finger at all. I just want you to look up. Now balance your yardstick on the end of your finger. Just looking up. Only looking up. Now let go with the other hand and balance it looking up. Okay, now what you should have noticed, it's much, much easier. Now if everyone could pay attention up front, there's a take-home for this. And here's the take-home message, and it's really important. Just like when you were looking only at the tip of your finger and concentrating on that, that's like when you think, I'm small, I'm insignificant, I can't make a difference, I can't change this big, huge problem of ageism. If you have that mindset, you're going to be unsuccessful, just like the yardstick. On the other hand, when you looked up, and you looked up at the bigger picture, and you saw, yes, I'm a part of not only the problem, but I'm part of the solution, and you had a broader, larger mindset, you were successful. That is what each of us have to remember as we move forward. And so therefore the sticker, you're all going to take this with you, and the sticker says, end ageism, be part of the solution. So I'm going to tell you, we're either part of the problem or we're part of the solution. So I'm calling you all to pledge today to be part of the solution. Thank you.
So that's it, folks, but please be sure you fill out an evaluation form on your way out and give us some feedback to help us as we do future planning. And don't forget the conference where Ashton will be speaking in October. So contact us if you want more information on that. Thanks, everyone.
Remember, before you go, life by the yard is hard. By the inch, it's a cinch.